If you have people at school who work fewer than 800 hours a year.
Tony's really
I don't know, maybe you do actually, you might.
What's that?
Well, if it's 40-hour week, I don't know. It's 20 weeks. So you may actually have people who work fewer than, yeah, you may. So this may be a bit of a misnomer, but still we find it's very helpful for a school to operate, operationally, to have a single code of conduct for all of their employees, regardless of whether they are technically special state employees. But just be aware that some people who are employees may actually work so few hours in state employment that they would also be special state employees, like your trustees. So the key difference with the between a special state employee and a state employee is in that attachment. A, the disclosure forms. When you have a conflict, you have fewer options as a regular employee than you would as a special state employee. The governor's exception, is rarely used, but that's not available to you. And you would have to get actual determination that there's no substantial interest. And in the financial interest in a state contract, you can't simply get away with disclosure on that one. That also works only for special state employees, not for state employees. So those are the two key differences.
Well, you're right where the rubber meets the road if you're looking at Tony. And you're at much more of a point where the conflicts are a board member, you're just sort of out there.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's why the rules are a little bit stricter.
For state
employees. What should I add here? Oh, so the mandatory training, and this is why I clicked into employees, that applies to all of your state employees. So all of the employees of the school should be doing the mandatory training online. And you should be collecting those receipts. I don't know if you build it into your handbook. So
The janitor. You've got to fill it out.
I don't know how it really works. I have to say, this requirement just came into effect. It must have been the past year.
Yeah.
And so we quickly did it and notified our clients that this was an obligation.
Is that training different for special state employees as opposed to regular state?
No, and that's why I didn't use it, even though I could have actually printed out the PowerPoint online and sat here with you. No, it's one training that applies to municipal, county, and state employees, and some things just won't be relevant to a particular body.
It's pretty painless.
It is very painless. I mean, I think 20 minutes is probably a long time to spend on it. That's like you get everything wrong every time. You have to keep going back. But it is painless. And the key is the receipt and getting somebody the receipt, and then you get to hold on to it. Okay. All right. Any questions that we haven't? Nope. Okay.
Thanks very much.
All right. Should I go on to public records, or do you want to take a break? Or
I'll go on. Go on.
Okay. Okay.
We can roll after the road test, yeah. But this was the road test.
Okay, so I'm going to give you two things now. One is a PowerPoint on record keeping. And the second is what I would call the Bible on the public records law. It was put out by the Division of Public Records, and it has everything in it. Including the statute and regulations. But I did a PowerPoint because it's a little bit hard to read and it's very long. It's printed out double-sided paper.
Give us the same thing. just
Oh.
different format, is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, they're
Sorry.
both about record keeping, but this is a PowerPoint I prepared, which is
Okay.
easy to read, and this is the Bible,
Okay.
and it's not that easy to read, like the Bible.
Enough for me.
Okay. So there's a big difference between the public records law and the state ethics statute. In that the state ethics statute asks you to think on your feet. You know, somebody calls you up and asks you to lunch. Well, you've got to think about that. You're asked to think on your feet. Somebody calls you into their, you know, again, the box office, the box at the theater or whatever, and asks you to have a seat. You have to think on your feet. The public records law does not move that quickly. It's more administrative at one end. What, you know, how do you deal with record keeping, and how do you deal with requests for records? You always have time, so I think it's easier to deal with. It's also, I think, just an easier set of rules to look at, to think about. So the first question under the public records statute is, what is a public record? So everything is a public record. It could be paper, it could be electronic, it could be video, it could be audio, and it's a public record. It could be email, it could be a computer record. So everything is considered to be a public record, and you have to treat it as such. The only qualification is it needs to be either made by or received by a state official. But that's pretty much anything that would be in, you know, that the school would have access to, or any of you within your capacity as trustees. There are a lot of exemptions, and that's really what we're going to talk about tonight, or what the exemptions are.
So this line about made or received by a state employee or official, that includes us, is what
That
you're saying?
includes you, but it includes
Okay.
you in your capacity as state employees.
So if I write an email to Dave about his boat, that's different than if I
That's
write
totally-
about the guy videoing?
Totally
Okay.
different, right. And we'll actually get into, one of the exemptions would even cover
Okay.
that. And it might even cover your email to him thinking about the school, as long as it didn't make it into a file. You know, we'll talk about that. But, you know, I guess you could say a priority, it's a public record. All right, here are the common exemptions. I've left out a lot. The Bible that I gave you has the complete list of exemptions. There are statutory exemptions. So anything pertaining to an evaluation of special needs children is by statute. It's a private record. It is not a public record. Student records, very broadly, are private records, not public records. We do get calls from schools from time to time because the state statute mirrors FERPA, the federal statute, which provides access to children and access to parents and guardians. And sometimes we get calls because, you know, depending on a family's domestic situation, it's sometimes unclear who has access to the records. And that's a situation where, you know, you have a little bit of time to respond. If you're not certain who the child's guardians are, who the child's parents are, you know, pick up the phone and call somebody and ask them to figure it out. You know, I can think of one situation where we got a call from a school that somebody had come forward as the child's father and was looking for the records. Well, in that, I mean, that happens in life. It's not something I handle. It is something that our litigators deal with from time to time. And I was told that at that moment in time, we did not have evidence that this person was either the child's parent or guardian. And so that person was not entitled to the records. And because these are private records, your involvement is both to make them public when they're supposed to be public, but not make them public when they're not supposed to be public.
I have a question about that. When the charter school is requesting records from another school, is there a certain time frame where they need to supply those records, assuming parents have signed off on that?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know the answer to that. Under both the state and federal statutes, those parents are entitled to the records of the other school. That's their right. I don't know that there's a time frame built into the statute. I mean, I actually looked at it recently, and I don't remember seeing that, but there may be case law on it, so I can't answer that off the top of my head. Is that something you want me to look up? I mean, I don't know if it's
It would be interesting to know
Would be, I
that.
mean, the other thing that's come up is that parents request the record themselves. Is there a certain time frame in which they should be provided with that record
From the district. From the district.
Okay, what I can tell you is that the public record statute says, under the public records law, when it's a public record and you're providing it as a public record, it's 10 days. So I can't imagine you would have more than 10 days.
That's
just my
what I was
analogy.
saying.
But it may be fewer.
And would it be different if it's school to school?
Well, even though
The
the
parents has to sign off, any
Yeah.
way you look at it, I know. But
Right,
there
even-
may be a difference between a parent asking and signing off versus the parent signing off and then the school asking schools to.
I'm going to say probably not,
Okay.
because in that situation, what you're really describing is the parent has the right to the record, the parent, instead of
Decide this
sending
is-
it right to the parent, sending it where the parent told you to.
So presumably it might be 10 days, but you're going to check on it.
Yeah, I'll see if there's anything on that that says it might be less. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay. Anything else on that? No? Okay. A second exception that comes up a lot are personnel records. There's actually several different exemptions that pertain to personnel records. If withholding is necessary for the government function. So that forces you, that's actually the most vague out of all these, but that forces you to consider, operationally, what will happen if I release this public record? Is it going to, cause a problem with how I operate as a school? And that might entitle you to withhold the personnel records. Privacy is a much easier one. Personnel and medical files are not public records. Materials or data relating to specifically named individuals, if it would constitute an invasion of privacy, not a public record. Examples include employment applications, evaluations of employees, documentation of disciplinary measures taken against employees, any information relating to promotion, demotion, or termination, home addresses and telephone numbers of employees. But the last item is their salaries as public employees. That's a public record.
But everything else is not, but how much they
Everything
make
else
is
is not, that's right. I think the rationale there is that for public oversight of how the government uses its funds, there's an entitlement to the money that they earn as public employees. And I know, I do recall, I needed to obtain information about an employee at a school, the salary paid to an employee at a school in a large Massachusetts city over a couple of years. And it wasn't that it was contentious, it was because we were trying to figure out whether the person was paid what they were supposed to have been paid, and the person didn't have good records, and the school didn't have good records. And it seems that the Boston Globe was requesting this routinely, and you could find it online. I mean, it was very interesting to me that was just something that they did. They made regular public records requests.
But does that mean any member of the public can say, I'd like to know what the math teacher in 5th grade makes? I'd like to know what the French teacher in 2nd grade
Apparently,
makes?
it's, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people are just their salaries, basically. That's
Yeah,
their
I mean,
identity.
one of the things that the Bible talks about, the Public Records Bible talks about, is that it's only their salary as a public employee, not any other kind of financial information about the person, but that is, yeah.
And you can see why it is, so that guys like Tony don't make $300,000, the teachers make $50.
Right. I think that's right. And if you want
Good
to,
example.
I mean, in the nonprofit world, nonprofit organizations file I-90s. They only have to file the salary information probably as the top 5, but that's probably the most significant anyway. So,
Since everyone.
Yeah, and with most of those, if you worked it out at an hourly rate, it wouldn't be a lot of money.
okay.
About 70 cents an
Just
hour
for the
for you.
record.
Now,
So in our
Yes.